And here's the perspective of Eric July.
Even though this happened right up the road from me, initially I had little interest in speaking on the senseless murder of Austin Metcalf. Now that the verdict is in, I only want to chime in from a more cultural perspective, more specifically a parental one. The points I want to make are less about the verdict itself, and there are just two things that I want to get across. The first one is this. One of the greatest values that you can instill in your children is impulse control. A lot of young people seem totally unaware that no matter what they've accomplished, no matter how bright their future is, they are one very stupid decision away from throwing it all away.
Impulse control, as opposed to Hotep Jesus, you touch me and I'll kill you.
This is a time preference issue. They have to keep their future in mind instead of living in the moment and getting consumed by negative emotions and letting those emotions drive an irrational decision. The talent doesn't matter in that moment. The grades don't matter. The scholarship, the potential, the plans you had laid out, none of it matters once the decision is made, because that kind of decision can't be taken back. Now, there are also those who have done nothing but burden their communities, one bad decision after another, off of zero impulse control. And
one bad decision after another, kind of like the decisions that Hotep Jesus wants to implement. Let me just tell you real quick. Thomas Sowell said something to the effect of, if you're selfless and you want to help people, you tell them the truth. If you're selfish and you only want to help yourself, then you tell people what they want to hear. Now, I don't know if Hotep Jesus falls into that second category of just telling people what he wants to hear, what they want to hear, but it does sound to me like he's playing into a whole lot of emotion, that he's trying to tap into the tribal mentality, almost the animal side of the human being.
In other words, they never really had a good thing going for them in the first place. But for the kid who does have something to lose, one bad decision is all that it takes. You can ruin your entire life over a single moment of self-gratification. And the moment passes in seconds while the consequences are going to last forever.
And that's exactly what Hotep Jesus is trying to promote. That impulse, acting on those feelings, riding that wave of emotion. Teaching your kids that if somebody touches you, especially if it's the white man, you got to kill him. That's the only answer. I mean, what do they expect if they walk into a tiger's cage? Expect to have your head taken off.
Impulse control has to be taught, and it has to be taught early, because the kid who learns to pause and just think before reacting is the kid who keeps his or her future intact.
A frickin' men.
Second value is just as important, if not more. Teach your kids, especially young boys, to understand the first point as it applies to everybody else. You cannot account for other people and how they were really raised. This goes beyond just mere situational awareness and learning how to de-escalate. The way things operate inside your household and your immediate environment is not the way the rest of the world operates. And your kids need to know and understand that.
This is that societal awareness. You need to have self-awareness, but you also have to have societal awareness along with that self-control and that impulse control.
The reality is that there are plenty of people walking around with no impulse control whatsoever, people who were never taught any of what we're talking about here.
Or we're taught the exact opposite of what he's talking about here, because that's what Hotep Jesus said that he would teach his kids. Somebody touches you, bring out the dagger.
Your children cannot underestimate how quickly someone can throw their own life away and how quickly that same person can end or negatively impact theirs. The other person's lack of restraint becomes your child's problem in an instant. And growing up in Dallas, I saw it a million times. People project.
This is so well put. So while you're teaching your kids the art of self-defense, karate, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, whatever, also teach them how to de-escalate. Teach them how to be diplomatic. Teach them, yeah, if you need to, fight back. If you can get away from it, do it. That's exactly the opposite of what Carmelo Anthony did.
Their own ethics onto others, and that leads to really serious miscalculations. Just because you wouldn't do something that foolish does not mean that the next person won't. You may look at someone and think, there's no way this person would do that, and then they do exactly that. And odds are the people in their life have spent years justifying that exact behavior.
That perfectly and accurately identifies the mentality of people like Hotep Jesus. Yet you might be self-controlled, you might be self-aware, but something you didn't take into consideration is that somebody else thinks exactly the opposite of the way you think. They think it's okay to stab somebody for merely pushing them.
This applies even more to those of you that are raising kids in these affluent areas like Frisco. When something dangerous is less likely, I guess, to happen to them, they have no real way of understanding how the world actually works unless you sit them down and tell them. They need to be aware of demographics, aware of where they are,
aware of demographics, aware of where they are, aware of the mentality of a certain demographic of people,
aware of how fast the situation can go south because somebody else around them couldn't control an impulse. They cannot afford to be naive, even as teenagers. Naivety in the wrong place and at the wrong time has gotten a lot of good people caught off guard. And as our culture grows lower in trust, the only way to really fix that trajectory is going to be raising sharp, aware kids. Kids who not only have a low tolerance for this type of foolishness, but stay hyper aware of everyone else's. You're not raising them to be paranoid when you do that. You're raising them to be aware.
And prepared.
Blessings up to everybody out there.
And let me just end with the words of Thomas Sowell again. He said, the problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is, and he confuses it with feelings.